Welcome to today's deep dive. Today we're going to be unpacking grandiose narcissism.
Ooh.
And it's something that a lot of people think they know what it is, but it's actually way more complex and nuanced
Absolutely.
than people realize. And it's also something that might hit a little closer to home for some people
Yeah.
than they think. And it can really wreak havoc in people's lives. So we're going to dive into that today.
Yeah, we're going to look at kind of, how these individuals operate,
Right, yeah.
what makes them tick, and most importantly, how you can recognize those patterns so that you can protect yourself.
Yeah, and one of the really interesting things that we found in our sources is how they develop.
Right.
Because a lot of people think, bad parenting creates a narcissist.
Right.
And it's not really that simple, is it?
No, it's not that simple. There's so much more to it.
Right.
It's this really complex interplay between nature and nurture.
Right.
And, one way to think about it is that some people might be genetically predisposed to certain personality traits.
Okay.
Like maybe they're more sensitive to criticism or they have a greater need for external validation.
So it's like they're kind of pre-wired a certain way.
Exactly.
And then their environment either kind of amplifies those traits
Right.
or it helps them develop healthier coping mechanisms.
Exactly.
Huh.
So for instance, one of our sources talks about a guy named Alex. And Alex was raised with excessive praise and entitlement.
Oh, wow.
Like he was constantly being told how special he was, regardless of, whether or not he actually achieved anything.
So that must have created a pretty distorted view of himself and his place in the world.
Absolutely. He developed this really inflated self-image and this need for constant admiration and a belief that he was above the rules.
Wow. And that's totally different from Jordan's story, right?
Yeah, Jordan had a really rough upbringing, lots of trauma and neglect.
Right.
And so to cope with that, he developed this facade of perfection and dominance.
So he was kind of masking his insecurities.
Exactly. He had to overcompensate for those feelings of inadequacy.
It's so interesting how two very different paths can
Yeah.
lead to similar outcomes.
Yeah.
So what is it that they have in common then if their backgrounds are so different?
I think that core need for external validation
Okay,
is a common thread.
that makes sense.
And that need for validation plays a huge role in how they interact with others,
Right.
especially in romantic relationships.
Well, that's a perfect segue then into talking about relationships because
Okay.
our sources really go into the manipulative tactics that are used. And I think most people have heard of this, but we have to talk about love bombing.
Oh, yeah. Love bombing. It's classic in the narcissist's playbook.
Yeah. So for people who haven't heard of love bombing,
Yeah.
tell us what that is.
Well, they basically shower you with compliments, extravagant gifts, constant attention. It's like this whirlwind romance that's designed to totally sweep you off your feet
Right.
and make you feel like you finally found the one.
Right. And it's all an illusion, right?
It is. It's a carefully crafted illusion.
Yeah.
They're mirroring your desires, telling you everything you want to hear.
Creating that intense connection
Exactly.
that feels almost too good to be true.
And of course it is.
And it is, right? And our sources give a ton of examples of those phrases that they use that are so textbook. It's like, I've never felt this way about anyone before. You're my soulmate.
Right.
I mean, that's really powerful stuff.
It is. And especially if you are someone who's maybe, longing for that fairy tale romance.
Right.
The narcissist knows exactly what buttons to push.
They can read people so well.
They are experts at reading people.
And they just know how to tailor their approach
Yeah.
to whatever that person's vulnerabilities are.
Exactly.
It's almost predatory in a way.
It is. It's about creating this dependency
Right.
right from the start.
Right.
And it's setting the stage for what comes next,
Oh, boy.
which is the devaluation phase.
That sounds ominous.
It is. And that's where things take a really dark turn.
So the honeymoon's over.
Yeah.
The mask starts to slip.
Mm-hmm.
And then the narcissist's true colors start to show.
Exactly. The compliments and the affection, they dry up. And you're left wondering, what did I do wrong?
Right.
They start criticizing you, belittling you, making you doubt your own perceptions.
Oh, my gosh. That shift must be so jarring
It is.
on the victim. It's incredibly jarring.
It's like going from being totally adored to being constantly scrutinized
Yeah.
and found wanting.
And it can be so disorienting and emotionally devastating because essentially what they're doing is they're withdrawing that validation that they used to hook you in the first place.
Right.
And that leaves you feeling insecure and desperate to regain their approval.
And that's where the real manipulation begins.
Yeah,
Right? Because they've created this dependency
they have.
and now they're exploiting it to control you.
Exactly. And so you might try to voice your concerns.
Yeah.
Tell them how their behavior is making you feel.
But they're going to use phrases like, you're too sensitive or you're overreacting
Right.
to dismiss your feelings and make you question your own sanity.
So they're gaslighting you.
They are. They are masters at twisting the narrative to fit their own needs.
Wow.
And they will do whatever it takes to maintain that sense of superiority and control.
This is heavy stuff.
It is.
But it's so important for people to understand these patterns.
Right.
Because knowing what to look for, I think, is such a huge first step in protecting yourself.
Absolutely. The more you understand these tactics,
Right.
the better equipped you'll be to recognize them early on and take steps to protect yourself.
And that's what we're all about here at the Deep Dive.
That's right.
We want to give you the information that you need
Yeah.
to protect yourself in all aspects of your life. So stay tuned.
Yeah.
We're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back.
Sounds good.
So we were talking about how grandiose narcissists use manipulation
Right.
to gain control in their relationships. And it's unsettling to think about how these tactics actually play out in real life.
Absolutely. And our sources actually go even deeper into another aspect of grandiose narcissism that's particularly unsettling, and that's their rage.
Rage.
Yeah.
Okay, now that sounds intense.
It is.
What exactly sets a grandiose narcissist off?
Well, imagine a house of cards, right? That's kind of like a narcissist's carefully constructed image of themselves.
Right.
It's built on this foundation of grandiosity and this need for constant admiration.
So anything that threatens that self-image is going to trigger a major reaction.
A major reaction.
Like that.
Exactly. Things like criticism.
Right.
Even if it's well-intentioned, can feel like a personal attack to a narcissist,
Right.
being ignored or overlooked.
I don't know.
Especially when they expect to be the center of attention.
Right.
That can be a major trigger as well.
It's like they're constantly on guard protecting that ego
They are.
from any perceived threat.
Yes. And when that ego is threatened, their rage can erupt in ways that are completely out of proportion to the situation.
So our sources paint a pretty vivid picture of what this rage looks like. And it's not just about being angry.
No.
It's about regaining control and punishing the person that they perceive as responsible for wounding their ego.
Right. It's about restoring their sense of superiority.
Right.
At all costs.
So they might lash out with verbal abuse, insults, even threats.
Yeah.
They'll try to belittle and demean the other person to reassert their dominance.
Exactly.
It's almost like they're reverting to a childlike state, throwing a tantrum because they didn't get their way.
That's a good analogy. And there might be some truth to that.
Right.
Because narcissism is often rooted in these unmet childhood needs and a lack of emotional maturity.
So they never learned how to regulate their emotions.
Right.
Or cope with challenges in a healthy way.
Exactly. And that's why their reactions can seem so extreme and out of control.
And it's really that lack of empathy.
Yes.
That I think is so chilling.
It is.
And our sources actually highlight some of the phrases that they use during these rage episodes.
Right.
That really illustrate that point.
Yeah, like, don't you know who I am?
Right.
Right. Reveals that sense of entitlement and their need to assert their dominance, or I'm the best at everything I do.
Of course.
Which is a classic example of their inflated ego and that need for constant validation.
Right. And then there's people are lucky to have me in their lives.
Oh, yeah.
Which highlights that belief that others exist to serve their needs.
Exactly.
We admire them.
It's all about maintaining that illusion of superiority, even if it means tearing other people down in the process.
So what can you do if you find yourself on the receiving end of this narcissistic rage?
Yeah. Well, our sources offer some really practical advice.
Okay.
The most important thing is to prioritize your own safety.
Right.
If you feel threatened or unsafe, remove yourself from the situation immediately.
Get out of there.
Yeah. Don't engage with them. Don't try to reason with them while they're in that state.
It's like trying to reason with a raging bull.
Exactly.
You're just going to make things worse.
Yeah. And remember, you don't have to tolerate this kind of behavior. Yeah. You deserve to be treated with respect, and you have the right to set boundaries.
And that kind of brings us back to the importance of recognizing those red flags.
Yes.
Early on.
Early on.
The sooner you can identify these toxic patterns,
right,
the better equipped you're going to be to protect yourself.
Exactly. Pay attention to those subtle shifts in their behavior, the language that they use, the way they make you feel. Trust your gut instinct if something feels off.
But what if you're already in a relationship with a grandiose narcissist?
Yeah.
Is there any hope of things getting better?
That's a tough question. And unfortunately, our sources don't offer any easy answers.
Yeah.
Changing a narcissist is incredibly difficult, if not impossible,
Right.
unless they are willing to acknowledge their behavior
And seek professional help.
and seek professional help.
Exactly.
So the focus really needs to shift from trying to change them to protecting yourself.
To protecting yourself. You can't control their behavior,
Right.
but you can control your own reactions and set boundaries
Right.
to protect your own emotional well-being.
That makes sense. But setting boundaries with a narcissist
Yeah,
can feel like such an uphill battle.
it can.
So what are some effective strategies that our listeners can use? So we were talking about setting boundaries with a narcissist.
Right.
And how that can be such a challenge.
It can. It really can. They're used to getting their way.
Right.
And they often view boundaries as a challenge to their control.
Right. So how do you actually set boundaries
Right.
with someone who's so skilled at manipulation?
Well, our sources offer some really practical advice.
Okay.
I think the first thing is to be really clear and assertive in your communication.
Okay.
Don't be afraid to say no
Right.
or to express your needs directly.
Yeah.
It might feel uncomfortable at first.
Especially if you're used to accommodating their demands.
Right.
But it's so important to stand your ground.
But what if they try to guilt trip you
Right.
or manipulate you into giving in?
That's where consistency is key.
Yeah.
Once you've set a boundary, stick to it.
Okay.
Don't waver. Don't make exceptions. Even if they try to, charm their way back into your good graces,
Right.
they're going to test you
They will.
to see how serious you are.
Right.
But the more consistent you are, the more likely they are to eventually respect those boundaries.
Our sources also talk about the importance of detaching emotionally.
Yes.
And that sounds way easier said than done,
It is. It's tough. Especially in the beginning.
especially if you're in love with this person.
Yeah. And you're deeply invested in the relationship.
Right.
But, it's about recognizing that you can't control their behavior. You can only control your own reactions.
Right.
So, start by focusing on your own needs and goals and gradually disengage from their emotional dramas.
So it's about shifting that power dynamic back in your favor.
Exactly.
Right. You're taking back control
Yes.
of your own emotions and well-being.
Exactly. And, that might involve limiting contact,
Yeah.
avoiding situations that trigger conflict,
Right.
or even considering ending the relationship altogether.
Wow.
It's a process and it's not always easy,
Right.
but it's so worth it
Yeah,
to reclaim your sense of peace and autonomy.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And our sources also talk about the importance of having a strong support network.
Yes.
Why is that so crucial when you're dealing with a narcissist?
Because narcissists are masters of isolation. They want to be the center of your universe. So they'll often try to alienate you from your friends and family.
Right.
So surrounding yourself with people who genuinely care about you
Yeah.
can help you stay grounded and see the situation more clearly.
It's like having that reality check when the narcissist is trying to
Exactly.
distort your perception of things.
Exactly. Your support network can offer validation, encouragement, and a different perspective.
Right.
When you're feeling overwhelmed or doubting yourself,
Okay.
they can remind you of your worth and your strength,
Yeah.
which are so essential for breaking free from the narcissist's hold.
This has been a really eye-opening conversation.
It has.
It's clear that dealing with a grandiose narcissist can be incredibly challenging.
It can be.
But I think understanding these patterns and these strategies that we talked about today
Yeah,
can really empower people to protect themselves.
absolutely. It's all about awareness, setting those boundaries,
Right.
building that strong support network,
Right.
and prioritizing your own well-being. You deserve to be in relationships
Right.
that are based on mutual respect, trust, and empathy.
And, if you're finding it difficult to navigate this on your own,
Right.
don't hesitate to seek professional help.
Please do.
A therapist can provide guidance, support, and strategies for healing from the emotional damage caused by narcissistic abuse.
Right. Remember, you're not alone. There are resources available to help you break free from these toxic dynamics and build healthier, more fulfilling relationships.
Absolutely. We hope this deep dive has given you some valuable insights and a sense of empowerment.
We do.
Stay curious, stay informed, and remember to prioritize your own well-being.
Always.
We'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.